Hello and good evening, everybody, for what is the last online masterclass for 2023, organized by Cinoco. So Cinoco, thank you for, again, a really nice year of masterclasses. And let's go out with a bang, I guess, with this last one, which is kind of a special one. As you see behind me, it's all about coffee today, which inspired my little word pun of Sino coffee in the background there. So no applause is needed for that. Thank you very much. But we're going to have 7 really nice spirits, liqueurs, drinks, basically, that all have something to do with coffee. And to guide us through all these, we have a familiar face, I think, for most of you who have joined us in these tastings before. It is Mr. Matthias Soberon, live from Ghent. Matthias,
Hi.
how are you?
I'm good,
Are
thanks.
you awake? How much coffee did you have today?
Well, since I live the teacher life and it's Monday, I had plenty of coffee today.
You had plenty.
Yes.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Listen, it's a very interesting lineup, I think, with some very different drinks. How do you think this is going to go, Matthias?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting in that sense that compared to many other tastings, a few of these products aren't really things we would regularly drink neat. So it definitely has like a way of looking at products from a different point of view, maybe a mixing point of view as well. But I do think that some of the products are very highly like on top of the quality level of what coffee infused spirits or coffee liqueurs can be. So in that sense, it's going to be a very tasty tasting.
It's going to be a treat, I think, also. Um, just before we start tasting the drinks themselves, I looked up a little bit of fun facts about coffee. So we all get into the mood a little bit. So um, there is a little bit of discussion how coffee was discovered as a drink, or coffee was discovered as something that revives you and makes you awake. The best story I found was about a 9th century Ethiopian goat herd called Kaldi, who saw his goats chewing the leaves of the coffee plant, and the herd was suddenly revived and very active. So that's why he was spurred to try it himself. Um, this was not confirmed as the true origin legend of coffee, but it's the best story I found. So there you go. Um, the first real, let's say, historical evidence of a coffee or a drink that is a lot like the coffee we have today, you can find in scriptures from Yemen from the 15th century, where there is the process of roasting and brewing the coffee is described like we do it nowadays. So that's the first real historical evidence. The first evidence in Europe is about 1600s in Italy, so quite late. There was lots of centuries before that. It was already known in the Arabic countries in the Middle East, but 1600s in Italy, and it was the Dutch East Indian Company that really started importing it large scale to Europe. So it was the Dutch that got us into caffeine, I guess. The English word coffee came from the Dutch word coffee, and the Dutch word coffee came from the Turkish word kahve, and that came from the Arabic word kawa, and that means as much as wine, apparently, in medieval Arabic. So it's also the scripture. Well, the word also means something like black or dark. So I guess the link with coffee is quite clear. Um, the biggest producer nowadays is Brazil. Even though it was only started in 1822 in Brazil to be grown in large scale in Brazil. And after that, you have nowadays Vietnam and Colombia as the biggest sources of coffee beans. And the biggest coffee drinkers are the Scandinavians. So all the Scandinavian countries are on top of the list. Finland is all the way on top with an average of about 12 kilos of coffee per capita per year. Um, just as a comparison, the Belgians, we have about 8.80 kilos of coffee per person per year. And I'm going to share something with you because I always try to get some literary tips in every tasting I do, or in whenever I can, basically. I'm going to share the screen with you. You should read this book if you're interested in coffee. It's a novel by Dave Eggers, American writer. It's about the how coffee originated in Yemen, and Yemen is nowadays, as you know, in war. So there's a lot of trouble with the really the oldest coffee making country in the world, and there's lots of coffee that doesn't even get to us anymore. But this is a really good novel, and it also teaches you something about how coffee works, how coffee is made, how coffee is sampled, etc., etc., etc. So The Monk of Mocha, really good book if you want to. There you go, Matthias. Shall we go on to the first sample?
Absolutely, yes, we should.
And the first one we put in the lineup is the gin, actually. So the gin 12 or gin 12, I'd have to say, because it's a French product, of course. I'll talk a little bit about the product itself before before Matthias maybe gets us some insights on cocktail uses or his thoughts about the drink. So gin 12 is made by Distillerie et Domaine de Provence. They are located in Fort Calquier in the Provence in France. Let's say the standard gin 12 is called that because it's made with 12 different types of botanicals. And as far as I could find, this one, the cafe infused one, is the same one, but it has some added coffee beans, vanilla, and cacao. So chocolate, basically. There you go. There it is on the screen for you. I haven't tasted it yet, so I'm going to taste it together with you guys. First thing I notice in the nose is that it has, even though there's a coffee infusion, and you always expect with coffee infusions that coffee will be overwhelming all the rest, but the juniper is still very apparent in this one, so it's still gin, you know?
Mm-hmm. I think in terms of like we're not really comparing yet, but I think it's one of the least coffee forward products in the tasting.
I also think so. I mean, it's I think that's really well done also, because the danger in using coffee in drinks is that you lose the original, that you lose the base, and you still have the juniper, you still have the gin in here, and I think it's well done. They also, one of the suggestions, well, you can drink it like this, you can drink it on ice, of course, but I still think this would work well with just tonic, like a normal gin and tonic.
The fun thing is, well, I do see some people in the chat already talking about the sugar in it. Yes, the taste is very sweet. Some people maybe have noticed it on the tech sheet that we just showed, but there's 80 grams of sugar per liter. So it's actually on the borderline of being a liqueur. From 70 grams on, you can call something a liqueur. So it's actually a gin liqueur already. But for being a gin liqueur, still very juniper prominent. So it's borderline between, yeah, it's obviously very sweet. But this makes it very workable with tonic as well, because many of the tonics, the bitterness can cut through it, especially with the drier tonics. And there is a fun drink which is called like you have the espresso GNT, but there's also something that's called a turbo GNT. A turbo GNT is actually a gin tonic with a shot of espresso and a little bit of simple syrup, a little bit of sweetener added to it. Something to really get you going. And this is a perfect product to just make it without with skipping the espresso and the sugar part. Just use this and add some tonic to it. It works.
Yeah, if you make that turbo GNT because you add the espresso, do you shake it to get it cold again, or how do you do it then?
I do a quick shake of the gin, the espresso, and the simple syrup.
Yeah.
Just to cool it down. But I prefer to do it with either a very large cube or doing a very short shake, not to dilute it too much. because your tonic will already dilute and your ice cubes in your glass will already dilute. So,
yeah. Are you well, you already told us that you're a teacher, so you are a big coffee drinker, but are you also a coffee connoisseur or a coffee lover, Matthias?
I used to be bigger into it. It was actually shortly before I really got into spirits that I was like trying to find a new interest. I used to write a lot about music before I was writing about spirits and cocktails. And I was getting more into like the entire tasting world. Was looking into beers, into wines, into coffee, and into spirits. But it quickly became spirits and cocktails. So I just didn't have the time to dive deeply into all of the tasting because then my life would be over, I think.
Yeah, no more sleep.
Yeah,
if you're a
no
coffee
more sleep,
addict.
no more liver.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, there is. I'm a quite a novice in the coffee world too. I mean, I've had some talks. We did a podcast with a coffee roaster and coffee experts, and it's a really interesting world because you have the same amount of flavors
Yeah.
and the variety of flavors that you can have in spirits or in wine are also in coffee and tea, of course, for that matter. But it's a very interesting world, but it's just you can't follow everything, you know.
Yeah, it's crazy. Last year, I think it was just when this bar was built, somewhere in September or October last year. I actually had a friend of me coming over who is a cupper who roasts coffee and who does coffee cuppings.
Yep.
And he uses these special spoons, you know, the ones that are perfect for tasting coffee as well. And we were trying to combine different cups of coffee with different spirits to make like a combined tasting, but things got so extremely nerdy and so extremely subtle and nuanced that it was like crazy because the spirits would take away flavors from the coffee and the coffee was very hot compared to some spirits and like it was a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned the word cupping because that's actually the professional way of calling it of tasting coffee is you cup it, so you put it in small cups and taste it like that, and you have to slurp.
Yeah, you have to slurp. It's pretty much as crazy as tasting wines or spirits. Like the
Yeah.
people are really into it.
Yeah. You can go all nerdy about this as you can with basically every subject, I think. So.
One other thing that we haven't discussed yet, I'm not sure whether you prepared something about it, but I think coffee beans in general is something that we in the spirit world, especially people who taste a lot, know as well. For smelling coffee beans in between larger tastings to like have a little bit of an a
Palate
nasal
cleanser.
palate cleanser. Like in the perfume world, it's done as well. Like it kind of works against, how to say it, like olfactory adaptations or something. Like just making sure that you cleanse your nose.
Yeah. Cleansing, you know, you can cleanse your palate, of course, with just some water or some bread or anything or some digestive cookies, digestive biscuits are used for that too. But for your nose, coffee really works well because it sets it back to like neutral position. Like shifting gear in the cars, sometimes you have to shift back to neutral to go back up again after that. So yeah. So guys, the gin. Any more comments about this? Oh, well, Mikael, I see you talking about reheating coffee in the microwave. I absolutely hate that too, and I would never do it. But I talked to the professional coffee barista, so the guy who has his own brand of coffee roasting, and he doesn't mind. He does it himself. So I'm stumped by that. I can't really understand why you would do that. And he also said he really enjoys his coffee cold. Just he makes it hot, of course, and then he starts drinking it, and then he enjoys it at different temperatures, even when it's just room temperature or cold. I guess I'm not that professional. Yeah. Coffee professionals are weird, yeah. I I do get all the references here with the Turkish coffee, the cardamom, very sweet, of course. Yeah, so I do get all these, but I think it would be nice to try it with a tonic. I'll may have to do that later on or one of the next days. We have for the next part in the tasting, we have grouped 3 of the rum-based drinks. And I think the first one we'll have now is the Caracas Club.
Yeah.
And I think Matthias will talk a little bit about that while I put it on the screen for you.
Yeah, just gonna do a little palate cleanser here.
Yes.
All right, so yeah, the following products we're going to talk about are the 3 rum-based products, of which I guess the Caracas Club Coffee is the easiest one to get into as well. The base of the the base of the product is a Venezuelan rum, which is on itself molasses based. They have a base rum. Caracas Club has an 8-year-old with, as they're saying, it's a minimum age of 8 years old. It should actually be 8 to 10 years old, aged on ex-bourbon, purely ex-bourbon casks. So the most commonly used barrel aging for most rums. It's a molasses-based rum, and as far as I could find, it's mainly column distilled, so it's a pretty like lighter style of rum, which means that the coffee has a pretty prominent place in it. We're dealing with 40% at this point, and this is definitely not a liqueur. It's not like the gin in a way that it's sweet. Mm-hmm. Although what rum does have is obviously the taste of sweet without actually being sugary. You know, like there are a lot of like sweeter flavor notes. First thing I had to think of when I put it to my nose before anybody else says it are like mocatine.
Mark beat you to it.
Oh, really? Yeah.
It's in the chat.
Yeah, but it's like it was the absolutely first thing I had on my nose as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was trying to be quick, but I didn't see the chat. So
Mark is the Lucky Luke of the spirits world. He writes faster than his shadow.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of confusion. I was talking to Jeroen about it a little bit before the tasting. When I was looking up the text sheets and on the website of Caracas Club, it says 100% Arabica. But on their own tasting notes, on their own website, they say there's an intense aroma of a coffee from a blend of Arabica and Robusta beans, which brings us to the fact that either they find that it smells like Robusta or they made a mistake in either the descriptor of the aromas or the product itself. I do think that most of the products we're going to taste are Arabica based. If
it's
not,
also the most used bean, of course, worldwide. So,
if not all, are a blend or like at least Arabica. Mm-hmm. So we're dealing with a medium-aged rum, molasses-based Arabica macerated. Venezuela is high on both coffee and rums. They're the 5th top coffee producer in the world. And it comes from the Andean region. So we're in Mérida, which is part of the Andes mountain range, northwestern of the country, between 12 and 1800 meters for those who care, above sea level. What is pretty specific about Venezuelan coffee or coffee producers is that they do something called shade-grown cultivation, or as we say in Netherlands, boskoffie, which is where the coffee plantations aren't solely coffee shrubs, coffee tree.
Coffee plants. Yeah, I think it's trees.
It grows underneath the higher trees under the shade of like the higher growing trees. So they have mixed cultivation there. Which has an effect, obviously, on the coffee beans itself, in a way that there are different influences in the ground. Whether I would be able to taste this in this rum, I'm not really sure if I can go there, but it's definitely something to take along.
Mm-hmm.
What I
Matthias,
get,
I was looking at the bottle, and on the back it says punch or rum.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just to indicate that it's a rum blended with something, or?
Technically speaking, these days, you would have to say it's a rum-based spirit drink to be correct, if you have post-distillation additions or additives to it. I'm not sure in what sense that they use the name Puncho Rum. There was little info to be found on that. I do know that Puncho Rum, and we're going to talk about it later on, is a specific term also used in the French territories.
Yeah. It also said they use a rum with RH, so it refers to that French.
Yeah.
Agricole,
so it could be that they take influence from the concept of rum punches or puncho rum, or the rum arrangé that we're going to talk about a bit later on when we deal with the third product. You do notice in this one, compared to maybe the previous one, had a lot of chocolate as well. The gin had a lot of chocolate in it. This one's is more a bit, I'd say, a bit toasty, a bit tea, a bit more vanilla. I'm not sure if anybody else is talking about it.
I also saw burnt toast vibe from Mikhail.
Yeah.
And Eric is saying it's a weird combination of rum and coffee, but it works. I like it. Jean is asking, can you heat this up? And is this recommended?
There is something that's called like a hot toddy, in which you use spirits that's combined with water and, for example, lemon or lime juice and a bit of simple syrup, so like a sour but with hot water. There's also something called a coffee grog, which is a rum-based drink to which you add hot coffee. I don't drink my spirits heated, where the spirit neat would be heated. Haven't actually tried to put rum in the microwave or just on a pan and try to taste it, or see where that would lead me.
Yeah.
Mark, do you have any whiskey heating for yourself? Do you do that? Maybe
only when it goes into an Irish coffee or into a Scotch coffee, or like you said, a hot toddy.
Yeah.
Because I do feel that it integrates better if you heat the whiskey that goes into your hot drink.
Yeah, the classical way of making your Irish coffee would be to heat up your whiskey before you do that.
Exactly.
So,
agreed.
Yeah. So, but to heat a spirit on itself, just to drink it like that, I'm not sure.
Well, sake maybe, but not much else, I think.
Yeah, you can't heat it too much, because otherwise all the alcohol would evaporate, of course.
Yeah. There is a concept in the cocktail culture which is called a SCAFA, SCAFFA, which is room temperature cocktails, though, which are not stirred with ice. So it's undiluted. So you would mix, but it's more with like amari and digestivi, aperitivi, that you combine together to have a room temperature drink. But it's not highly spread across the cocktail culture itself. It's a pretty specific Italian thing. But yeah, in terms of making cocktails, it's definitely an easy product to, for example, make an espresso martini and using this instead of vodka. Like, I mean, if it would be a classic way of doing it.
I always fear a little bit, Matthias, with these recipes, when espresso martini calls for adding espresso, of course. But if you start with a coffee-based spirit, wouldn't it be too much then?
No, I don't think so. Because it also has coffee liqueur, so you get coffee in multiple levels. I think it's a very interesting way of using it. I also have Arabica cocktail bitters as well. And it's like, depending on how the product has been integrated in a spirit or in a liqueur or in the cocktail itself, whether it's an espresso or a cold brew, a cold drip, it all has different kinds of integrating coffee flavors. Obviously, if you're drinking a couple of those, your caffeine levels can definitely skyrocket. I mean, like it's like vodka Red Bull type of stories where your caffeine levels start rocking.
Don't make espresso martinis and add Red Bull. Might be just a little bit too much.
So I think that's one thing to watch out for, like to be aware of if you're making coffee cocktails. But like going for it in layers of coffee flavor, go for it. Absolutely.
There was a question earlier, Matthias. I don't know if you're if you could answer this. I can't. But is cold brew coffee still a thing?
I hope so, because I'm still doing it.
Okay, there you go.
I
think so too. I mean, I don't see it that much, but I'm not really. I don't really hang out at coffee bars too much. But I guess.
Well, I have to say, like, I live in Ghent, which is still like hipster capital of Belgium. So like a lot of the coffee bars here have their cold drip or cold brew. There's a different technique to it. I'm not 100% sure exactly how it works, but it has to do with caffeine integration and the way of production itself. But yeah, it's definitely still a thing.
And is cold brew coffee something you would use in cocktails?
Yes, definitely, because it's easier to take along to like events or like when you're doing stuff, like it's easier to work with it. Although I do think that its cold drip is more intense because it's slower. I think it integrates the caffeine a bit more intensely. But yeah, if you have to take it somewhere, because you can't always take hot espresso everywhere. So in terms of consistency and temperature, it's definitely easier to work with. At home, I think it's still easier to make an espresso.
Yeah. Mika saying, for the ADHD people among us, we have a natural resistance to caffeine and it might help you relax. Okay. So espresso martinis instead of Rilatin. Sounds good.
You didn't hear it here.
No, you didn't. No. It's not an official recommendation, by the way. The second one makes you think of the Lange Leemstraat. Fleur, I don't know what you mean by that, but I know the Lange Leemstraat in Antwerp, but please elaborate in the chat.
Yes, the Lange Leemstraat, that's where they make the candies with
the mocatin, the Arabircus.
The mocatin, yeah.
That we talked about. Of course, yeah. Dominique, it's you. Yeah,
yeah, it's me. Yeah, but I'm using a Fleur laptop, so that's why I'm
using your
calling Fleur
alibi
today.
Yeah. All right, cool. Welcome. All right, Lange Leemstraat. Shall we go on to the next one, Matthias? What do you think?
Yes.
So the next one will be the Ron Colon. Ron Colon Salvadoreno coffee infused rum. Pour myself a drop. I'll tell you a little bit about this product. Immediately, the color is a lot lighter, so I'm expecting something really different in flavor. As always, you should know I haven't tasted these before the session, so I'm exploring them together with you. Completely different. So most of you who have joined in more of these masterclasses by Cinoco have tasted some of the products from Ron Colon before. We've had the Rum Skull in one of the last ones. We've also had the Rum and Rye blend. I always think these are really, really interesting products because they are so deliciously weird and deliciously strange and different from everything else that's on the market. Again, with this, I have the same vibe. So there you go. Ron Colon was founded in 2018 by two guys, Thurman Wise and Pepijn Janssens. They were traveling in Latin America. They did a 22-day trip across 16 countries, which sounds like not really relaxing. It's really, really hard work. And they fell in love with El Salvador, one of the smallest countries in Latin America, which is actually called locally. The slang for El Salvador is Civar, apparently, something I learned again today. And because they fell in love with this little country that had gotten a bad name because of politics and war in the 80s and 90s, but they really fell in love with all the nature there and the people and everything that was going on. They had a plan to showcase the real niceties of El Salvador in their drinks, and so that was the plan. They got a couple other people into the team for product development, and one of them was Andres Trigueros, and he's the head of Jag's Head Coffee, which is a coffee farm in El Salvador. Coffee farm high on the flanks of the Mount Santa Ana, which is actually a volcano, a silent volcano, of course. But that's where the coffee from Jag's Head Coffee is grown. They have a total of 4 farms, and the coffee farming is in their family for the last 150 years. So they know what they're talking about. Coffee in itself is apparently the biggest export product of El Salvador nowadays, so very important for the country. So it was logical, basically, that they would try and use the coffees of Jag's Head Coffee in a drink too, which is what you have in your glass right now. The product itself, there's no sugar added because they want to have it as clean and natural as possible. And they use bourbon coffee beans with a medium roast, and a medium roast gives them a very rich chocolatey taste and also some cherry notes in the coffees. These beans are then macerated for 48 hours in the rum, and the rum itself is a mix of 6-year-old rum from El Salvador, from the Licorera Teotihuacan, it's called. And there's also some unaged Jamaican rums from Worthy Park, Hamden, and Monymusk in there, and also some 3-year-old Worthy Park. So that's left alone with the coffee beans for 48 hours, and then it's non-chill filtered, but filtered, of course, and bottled at 81 proof, so 40.5% ABV. And of course, as you all know, with these drinks, they pay homage to the colon, which is the the currency in El Salvador is called the colon, honoring Christopher Columbus. Spanish name is Colon, and they use old banknotes or the images of old banknotes for their labels. And that's what you see on the bottle, which I put on the screen for you now. So
I think it's very clear on the palate that this is the first unsweetened product of the 3. Well, we've been going down a little bit. Gin was very sweetened. The Caracas was sweetened, but a lot less than the gin. But yeah, it tastes pretty harsh maybe from the first taste if you had to sweeten products to go to a completely unsweetened product. So that could also be a little bit heavy on the palate.
It's almost like it's not rum.
Yeah.
After the first two that we had.
It's like it's a bit deceiving to have the comparison between the Caracas Club and the Ron Colon, because this is actually just a coffee infused spirit, and the other one was, and maybe that's more of a link to the Rhum Arrangé or the Puncho Rum, where it was definitely sweetened as well. Where you have to, like, there's the integration of the coffee itself also gets different notes. This one is a lot fruitier and like in how do you say it? Like it tastes greener or something, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
people are calling it like stale and some kimchi. Mikael is saying so, a bit of fermentation.
That's Jamaican rum as well, you know.
Is that I think that's the green notes maybe that you're talking about, or
It's difficult to pinpoint everything. The first time I had a Ron Colon, I had no clue that there was a Jamaican rum inside of it. And the Ron Colon coffee infused comes in two different ABVs. So there's the 80 proof, the 40%, which we're having right now. And they have also a 111 proof or a 55.5 ABV. I was a bit caught off guard because I thought it's going to be a rum from El Salvador, which is on itself slightly less pronounced in terms of flavor. But yeah, the higher esters of the unaged rums from the three distilleries you mentioned, Moneymusk, Worthy Park, and
Hamden.
Yeah, really got to me because it also has like a lot of weird fruitiness, a lot of like the mushrooms that Eric talked about, like some savory notes, some umami.
The oxo that Eric is talking about, so the umami, the savoriness,
It's definitely a play between what the unaged Jamaican and the coffee beans do. But also, sugar, we all know, can both elevate and mask certain flavors in products. So what you get here is a bit more like, maybe not the most correct word to use, but like it's more honest in terms of what you're getting from a coffee infusion or a maceration.
Yeah. It's certainly more. It has the more black coffee vibe, while the earlier ones had more of the coffee and cream and coffee and sugar vibe.
Yeah.
So is this kind of product, Matthias, then is it more fun to work with for cocktails, or is it harder, or?
It is more fun in that way that you can build your cocktails more easily, because whenever you're working with spirits that you don't know how sweetened they are, it takes a time to adjust all the other ingredients to it. If you have a product like this, you can build your balance way quicker and way more like based on what you know and what you can go from. It's also very pronounced. So like it really does some shoulder work, some heavy elbow pushing left and right, playing around with it. I prepared a little cocktail as well, because one of the fun matches here is coffee and pineapple. I think it's something you see a lot in a lot of desserts as well. But in drinks too, like there's a couple of pineapple and coffee based drinks, going back to Don the Beachcomber and Trader Vic's, so to the early godfathers of what would later on be tiki, because Don the Beachcomber and Trader Vic's didn't use the word tiki before. It's a word that was coined after they started. It was more like tropical drinks or rum rhapsodies, as they called it themselves. But what makes it fun is that you also can use this, like coffee in a cocktail often comes either from espresso, which already dilutes your drink a lot, or it comes from a liqueur. Like often the bigger names would be, back in the day, would be Kahlua and Tia Maria. Nowadays you have a lot broader range with a lot of better or more honest products,
of which we'll have one later on.
We'll be talking about in this session. But we, like, at least in mixology, we were always infusing our own spirits or our own, for example, like a coffee infused vermouth for a Negroni, or a coffee infused Campari for a Negroni, or a coffee infused gin for a Negroni. We were always infusing it ourselves, which gives us a bit more like control on how intense we get things. But with products like Ron Colon, you get something that is super consistent. It is well balanced. It is well made. It is an honest product, which gives bartenders or home mixologists a bit more freedom to play with, because that's what I keep saying as well. In an ideal world, we could do every infusion ourselves, but the amount of time, work, trial and error, and the amount of product you're wasting in finding your own things for a person that's just doing it for themselves is not worth it. So I prefer working with well-crafted products rather than always saying it has to be homemade, because I would not always be able to do it better than a producer. Like in this case, Ron Colon does it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're making one live, I think, but
yeah, I will.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I was just going to say that in that way, what you were talking about, these products from Ron Colon are made for bartenders, all of them. The rum skull too, and the rum rye too. With I think with basically that philosophy that you just talked about in mind.
Is it weird to put my camera like this?
That's okay, Matthias.
I see Mikael smiling, so I must be doing something right.
Yeah,
Is this where I get my compliment?
He's writing. I can see it.
So yeah,
I'll put the recipe on the screen in a minute, but we'll follow Matthias now just while he's doing it.
So yeah, we're using a double ounce or 60 milliliters, 2 shots of the Ron Colon coffee infused. We're going to combine it with pineapple juice. I'm using something from a brand that has a Lion supermarket that I'm not going to name, but they have a very good 100% juice, pineapple juice, which I like using for its consistency, because pineapples here in Belgium aren't always like very consistent. Using 60 mLs of it as well, so 2 parts pineapple juice, 2 parts rum, and then half a part simple syrup and half a part lime juice. So 15 mLs lime and 15 mLs simple syrup. It's a basic drink. It would be, you could call it like a pineapple enhanced daiquiri or something. But I'm going to shake it up with crushed ice and serve it like that in a old-fashioned style glass rather than serving it in a coupe, because pineapple juice can handle a bit of ice. You know, like it's one of those flavors I prefer to stay cold rather than warm up a bit. You know, like if a drink is served in a coupe, temperature will rise a bit faster, but it will dilute less. But I think pineapple juice is one of those flavors that I'd rather have dilute a little bit more than warm up in a drink. So it's very easy. 60, 60, 15, 15. If you like your drinks on the sweeter side, you can add a bit more simple syrup. If you prefer it slightly more tart or sour, then you can use a bit more lime juice. Just keep the pineapple and rum at 60 each.
So they are evenly matched, basically.
Yeah.
As always for everybody, you don't have to write everything from the recipes down. You'll get. I'll put it on the screen, and I'll make a PDF of the PowerPoint and send it to all of you afterwards, so you have all the recipes, so you can make it at home.
I see a question on dilution and shaking with crushed ice. I do what is called a whip shake, where I just add under a handful of crushed ice for the shake. So there is just a very short integration and aeration of the ingredients rather than doing a shake for dilution. I only shook for about 7 or 8 seconds rather than a full 12 to 15. So the shake is, as you can see, I'm also using a tinier glass here. You don't see any ice yet because I didn't add like a lot of ice in the shaker. I will just use fresh out of the freezer crushed ice, which isn't wet, which hasn't been sitting in my well or something for a while. So and if you then add like a ton of crushed ice to it, it will give that cold boost without diluting it too quickly. In another sense, you could use a really big cube for shaking and or serving, which has the same effect. The only thing is that in a cocktail you just want, and that's a bit of an issue with a lot of people making drinks at home. Either use as much ice as you can in a drink or no ice at all. Never go for 1 or 2 cubes or some shitty wet ice to control the dilution, because that's a lot of thing. Yeah. So to answer the question of Zoom user, which I don't know.
Zoom user, which is yes, very.
I hope this helps to understand why I'm doing the thing I'm doing.
Yeah. I'll put the picture, because these cocktails were prepared beforehand too, and Matthias made nice pictures of them. I'll put it on the screen so you know how it should look. There you go. Pretty cool cocktail, I think. And you called it the stowaway. You told me earlier that it's the hardest thing in cocktail making is thinking up names.
Yeah. Well, essentially, this one is a variation on a drink by Jeff Berry, Beach Bum Berry. For those who don't know him, he's the guy that was able to discover the secret recipe of the zombie cocktail by Don the Beachcomber. Jeff Berry has a bar called Latitude 29 in New Orleans. He's a tiki historian, and he had a drink with coffee and pineapple, which is called a Castaway. But I'm not using as much coffee as he is, so I went for the stowaway.
Nice. It looks really good. I don't know what you guys think about it, but kind of makes me want to make it.
Anybody have some like fruits they like combining with coffee? Like I said, pineapple is a really good one, but maybe somebody else?
Classic one is orange, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Plum, Zoom user said. Verjus. Mikael is coming over for you to make him one of these next week, Matthias.
He can hand his compliment in real life.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Ginger, Dirk is saying. Mark is also coming to your house, Matthias, so...
Sounds like a party.
Yeah, sounds like a party.
One more and we can play Manil.
Manillen. Okay, I'll come over. No worries. No, really nice. Maybe we should go on to the next one.
Yeah.
If you're okay with that. Which is the Le Canaille, which is the Punch au Rhum Marseillais Café Vanille.
Yeah. So brings us to the whole punch au rhum, rhum orangé, spiced rum, botanical rums. There's an entire world out there. Where in this case, a rhum orangé or a punch au rhum is a historical thing that is, it originates in a lot of the French territories from La Réunion, Ile de la Maurice, and then Martinique, Guadeloupe, where household families, in fact, just put spices and fruits in bottles with rum or with liqueurs. So you have like Creole shrub is like an orange liqueur where spices were added in the bottles as well.
Which Clément has a version of.
Rhum GM as well. Clément has it. A lot of the agricole rum producers have a shrub. It's written with 2 B's, not a single B as in the vinegar-based syrup. A shrub is also a vinegar-based syrup. It often gets confused online, but a shrub with double B is like a Creole thing. In that sense, rhum orangé is more used on the other side of the world, so Ile de la Maurice and La Réunion, and punch au rhum is what they will use more in terms in the Caribbean. Just for a fact, if you see it on a bottle, most likely that will be the difference. Whereas the tradition keeps everything inside the bottle. Jeroen showed it. There's vanilla beans and coffee beans in the bottle itself if you buy it, which gives it a less consistent type of product than, for example, a spiced rum, where they will infuse the base spirit and add sugar in any form to it, but will filter it before serving it out. Maybe like what Caracas Club Coffee does. That's where it gets a bit of confusion, why they're using the term punch au rum.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. In this case, we're dealing with a base rum from Martinique, from Habitation Saint-Étienne. It is not a distillery on itself. It's called Distillerie du Simon. It's in the southeast of the island. There's several Martinique rums are produced there, but Habitation Saint-Étienne is one of them. They do have their own house, the Habitation, to them, but the distillery is a combined distillery. Martinique, for those who have any clue about it, and that's where it differs from the previous two rums, is apart from one distillery on the island, it's all sugarcane juice based. So it is not molasses based rum. And Dirk van den Bak says that Clément used to be distilled there as well. So older Clément distillates are from the same distillery as this product then. They use Arabica as well from Guatemala, and well, bourbon vanilla beans from where else? Madagascar.
Madagascar, yeah.
Some tasting notes.
Yeah, fresh acid nose, pipi de chat, as some Sauvignon wines like Puy Fumé, Eric says, which is nicely put, Eric. Thank you for that. Umami. Eric is always very good with tasting notes and honest reactions, so that's good. Umami. And Michael is saying, is it me or do the flavors simply vanish after 2 seconds, like no finish?
I'm not.
For me, it stays a bit longer, but
I'm not there yet. Let me take my sample. I think the umami could as well be a reference to the cane juice rum base. So it's there's to use an expensive word, there's more terroir in cane juice rums than there is in molasses based rums, because cane juice is pressed fresh and it is then fermented directly, whereas molasses often come from different countries. So for example, Barbados rum is produced on Barbados, but doesn't always use Barbados molasses because they simply don't have enough cane sugar cane on the island to produce the amount of molasses they need. On Martinique and the other cane juice producing rum islands, they always use the cane juice from the islands themselves.
and a lot of the time, even from their own farms.
Yeah, their own farms. They often, like, I don't think it's a case for this one, but they also produce rums that are from single varieties of sugar cane. But that's often the more peculiar tasting notes you get. For having a vanilla bean inside a bottle, I don't find the vanilla to be as prominent as, for example, on
not overpowering. No,
I found more vanilla on the Caracas Club.
Yep.
Where I do feel that they may have been adding a bit like essence de vanille or something like a fresh vanilla pod. So that's a fun thing about like the rhum orangé or the punch of rums, is that the flavor infusion is not an essence. It is not a distillate. It is not a
it's just really the vanilla pod.
Yeah, they just drop vanilla and coffee beans in there. They do it with fruit as well. I have some. It's not from Le Canaille, but I have some rhum orangés here from other brands where you have pieces of pineapple, where you have peppercorns, where you have cinnamon bark, just all dropped in the bottle. It's fun to try yourself as well, but do note that less is more. Don't fill up your bottles thinking you need to fill a third or something.
I have the feeling, Matthias, that rhum orangé is something that's not really well known here in Belgium, or at least maybe it's more well known in the French-speaking part. I'm not sure of that, but we're not used to it.
No, it's quite a big thing in France because of the link with the French territories, obviously. But here in Belgium, it's not really big. It kind of has less qualitative name to it, because spiced rum on itself, sadly, due to some brands and some products, has a negative connotation. But learning what rum arrangé or punch or rum is a completely different cultural thing than a spiced rum. So it's definitely something to learn about and understand what it is on itself.
Yeah, as Dirk is saying, in Wallonia, this sells like hotcakes. So well, I think hotcakes is the good English translation of zoete broodjes.
Yeah, but do know that our southern country men are a lot more into rum than we are. Like Salon du Rhum, for example, is extremely big. I think the rum sales in general in Wallonia are very big compared to Flemish rum sales.
Yeah, but I think as you rightly pointed out, it's just a matter of culture. There's the link with France, with the French colonies from the past, and that culture of drinking rum. So I guess it's quite understandable.
Also, for the geeky people, punch, the word itself comes from the East Indian territories back in the day. The word actually comes from a local word for the word 5, the number 5, for all the ingredients that were into it. So they were making cocktails before cocktails were a thing. So 100 years ago, often with Batavia Arak, which is a cane juice spirit from Batavia, Sri Lanka, that region, they were infusing rum with like spices, and they were adding tea to it, and some citrus and some sugar. So you would get something that we these days would call a cocktail, the rum punch. But what they were doing then in the Caribbean and in the islands were making like rum punch in a bottle itself. So a bit of historical addition to it.
You also made a really nice looking cocktail with this. Shall I put it on the screen first, or do you want to talk about it first?
Oh, you can put it on the screen.
There we go. It looks amazing.
Yeah, I think this one works extremely well in espresso martini variations, just because of the slightly savory and green notes in the rum itself. Kind of counteracts the sweetness. As you may see, I only use a bar spoon of a type of sweetener, which would be maple syrup in this case. So less than what a regular espresso martini would get. I liked adding a dash of cocoa bitters, preferably one of the more bitter ones, because also in bitters there's a huge difference in sugar level, sugar content. The cinnamon stick on there is a bit of a I would never serve a drink like that actually itself, but I didn't find my lighter when I was taking the picture, and I didn't want to mess up the time for the cocktail to set and the glass to start sweating. So I just threw the cinnamon stick on there. But it's always fun to light, for example, some cinnamon and to smoke your glass, or to grate some cinnamon on top of the drink for the additional flavor. But yeah, it's always beautiful, and the essential oils in the fresh espresso, because espresso beans do have an oil content as well, are the thing that makes it foam so pretty as well.
Yeah, so Mark agrees. Great pick. Yeah, and again, as we said last Thursday when preparing this, great name, Espresso Vanilli. I was thinking about Milli Vanilli, so I was thinking, is this a cover of something, or but it just sounded good, right, Matthias?
Thank you. Yeah, I also wanted to add just a little something. There is a drink called the carajillo. I hope I pronounce it correctly. Which is essentially like a cafe corretto, like a corrected coffee, a mix of an espresso with a spirit. So it's not as large as like an Irish coffee where you add more components, but just 50-50 espresso and a spirit. And in that case, this would be a perfect addition as well. So if you feel like whipping up something that everybody can do, just take a heat-resistant glass or a cup, make an espresso and add equal parts of the spirit to it. Carajillo itself means little courage. You know, the carajo, something as it's based from courage. You know, like and
I'm just going to let you talk yourself into oblivion.
yeah. But yeah, everybody knows what I'm talking about. You know?
Yes, we do.
Which is something it's often done with licor 43 as well. Sorry for naming the concurrerende brands, but like they get out with it. But I think using a more like a stronger product that's a bit less liqueur, but also slightly sweetened, something like this is perfect to do it. So 50-50 espresso and rum canaille. Bon temps.
Sounds good. And I think we can name other brands as long as they are not as good as the ones we're tasting. So.
All right. In that case, liqueur.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No worries. Yeah. All right. I think we're going on to the last trio of the tasting. And we've grouped them a little bit because they are going into the world of liqueurs a little bit more now.
Yeah.
The first one we're having is the Jebenabuna. I'll put a picture on the screen. This is not a cocktail that Matthias made. This is one of the official picks that Massenet has launched, but I'll put it on the screen anyway, so you have an idea of how the bottle looks. I'll tell you a little bit about this. So we're in a coffee liqueur now, produced by Massenet, which is a producer from the Alsace region, north of France. They've been making eau de vie and liqueurs since 1870. For those of you who were there in the last session, the Golden 8, the pear liqueur was one of theirs too. And so for this one, they have made a coffee liqueur. They use coffee from Ethiopia with a combination of maceration of the beans and distillation. The coffee beans themselves, they came from Ethiopia, but they were roasted and grounded in France by a torréfacteur professionnel called Vincent Ballot from the region, also in the Alsace, from the region of Massenet. A really high-end coffee roaster, coffee producer, I'd say. And the Jebenabuna, it's quite a special name. It's named after the Ethiopian coffee ceremony. And I was reading about this a little bit today to prepare, and it's actually quite a beautiful thing. Apparently, in Ethiopia, one of the highest honors you can have is being invited to a family to join in the coffee ceremony, which is called the Jebena. They do this up to 3 times a day, the coffee ceremony. It's a big token of respect and friendship if you're invited. And to prepare the coffee for the guests is a big honor too. And it's usually the matriarch or the mother of the family that gets the honor of doing this. It's quite elaborate because the coffee beans are being roasted before your eyes while you're there. So they roast the coffee beans. When they are roasted, they're in a pan on an open fire. And then they let you smell the beans before they are grounded up. So everybody gets a smell of the beans. Then they are grounded up, also by hand, of course. And they are put together with water into a typical traditional Jebena pot. And I have a picture of that. I'll show it you. This is a Jebena pot, so it looks like that. This is put on the fire and it's boiled several times. Not one time, but it's boiled several times. And then when the matriarch, the mother, thinks it's ready, it is poured into cups and handed out to the guests to sip and to savor. During the ceremony, usually they will burn some incense too, to add more aromatic experiences to the whole ceremony, and to make it really a special moment. So I thought it was really beautiful, this ceremony. I hadn't heard about it before, and so that's why they called it this liqueur. It's called the Jebena Buna, and if you look at the picture of the bottle, the Jebena pot is also on the label. So there you go. Matthias, what do you think about this one?
I think this is, especially if you're into coffee liqueurs rather than spirits infused with coffee, I think this is one of the most interesting liqueurs there is. The amount of layers they're able to get into it flavor-wise is very, very complex.
Mhm.
Whereas Mikael said something about like a shorter finish on the Le Canaille, I think here things keep coming, especially for a liqueur. That's pretty special. I see Mark also writing something about surprisingly unsweet. Yeah. It's definitely not a liqueur that stands on sugary legs or something, you know.
The coffee is the star here.
I was extremely impressed. I think it was only the second time that a coffee liqueur really like blew me away. I've had pretty countless amounts of coffee liqueurs, going from the most unsurprising things to okay stuff, but this one is out there. Quite pricey on itself for a liqueur, but for the amount of quality you get, it's well worth it, you know.
As you said, most of these coffee liqueurs are sugar with some flavors added. This is a completely different beast. I mean, This is all about the coffee.
Yeah. It was when I tasted it, like I just wanted to try every single cocktail with coffee liqueur I knew to see how it would work in it. Like,
and did you?
Not all of them, but like it was a hard not to just keep on going. You know, like it was like, oh, this is gonna be great in this. Oh my God, I need to try this one out as well. And you know, like it just kept coming and coming and coming. Superb liqueur. Yeah.
Yeah. And Mark is also saying that body, you can almost chew it. It's got lots of Yeah,
and I love the fact that a lot of like the some more like herbal tones are being talked about right now, because like coffee beans on itself are often used as a flavor tone in spirits, you know, where you will say like, oh, it tastes like there's some coffee in it or something. Yeah. But when you're tasting coffee liqueurs, you can't just say like, yeah, it tastes like coffee, you know. You need to get your
laziest shortcut in the history of man.
Yeah, so you need to get your wording in other places. But that's where it gets super interesting, because at that point, like if like Mark, you get like bay leaves and celery here, it kind of links back, like if you taste coffee in, for example, a rum or a whiskey, like what is it that you get, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's the chain of flavors you're talking about gets really complex.
But I was just thinking, if you're cupping coffee, if you're tasting coffee, you will describe the coffee you're tasting with all kinds of notes like cherry and chocolate and whatever you want, and they can be very different. So that also makes you think, if somebody says this whiskey tastes like coffee, what kind of coffee?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it cherry in the coffee? Is it chocolatey? Is it bitter? Yeah. Is it what is it actually that you're talking about?
I think one of the prime examples, especially like in spirits, is like when you say like, oh, there's notes of apple. like difference between like Jonagold or like
Granny Smith,
Granny Smith or a Pink Lady is extremely different.
Yeah.
So you learn how to work around these flavors, but it also shows that if you're dealing with main flavor tones, like in this in this session we're talking about coffee as a flavor, you can't just rely on using coffee, you know.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets very interesting, and it's super cool that we've been dealing with vanilla, but now we're going on to herbal sides of coffee.
Yep. Absolutely, really good stuff, and people are agreeing. Very good taste and quality, people are saying. So also the lowest one in ABV up till now, so 25%.
Yes.
Don't even notice it that it has less ABV than the other ones. The flavor is so complex and so interesting. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in a weird way, like it tastes way more complex in terms of coffee than a lot of for being a liqueur, compared to some of the more spirit forward products we've had before.
Yeah. I can't wait to see what you've done with this. Well, I know already, but but I can't wait to see you tell these people about what you've done with this, Matthias.
I'm not sure which one you're going to show first.
Spice Gun is first on the
All right,
slide,
yeah.
but whatever you want.
Let's go for the Spice Gun. So the Spice Gun is a variation on the revolver. Haha, Spice Gun, you know.
There you go.
It's oh, look at that! Isn't it beautiful?
It's beautiful stuff.
On itself, the revolver is a cocktail that's essentially a Manhattan, where the vermouth is switched for coffee liqueur. So it's bourbon or rye, if you must, with normally sweet vermouth and some bitters. In this case, a revolver is made with coffee liqueur. But what I've done, and that's the play where my I had the same link as Mark did. Like it had a lot of green herbs in it, or like the more savory tones. And so like I wanna keep pushing that towards some spiciness. So I added some ancho reyes, which is like a chili liqueur to it, which gives you a push in the umami and herbal direction of the drink. Stir that with some orange bitters to give the bourbon, or like Tennessee whiskey. We all know what kind of brands we're thinking in this case. But you know, like it's a super easy drink. It's really tasty, and it's kind of the tie in between an old fashioned and a Manhattan in terms of what you're looking for in a drink, ABV and flavor wise, sweetness wise. So definitely something to make. I really love it. If you don't have ancho reyes, you can, but be very careful with it. Play around with hot sauces. It is something I do regularly. We talked about it when you were at my place, Jeroen, about sauces and cocktails. There's a beautiful world out there, but if you're not really used to it, you can go wrong with it very quickly, because spiciness can shut down your palate completely if you're using too much of it. So it's very much worth adding it drop by drop if you have a single drop. I have these plastic droppers, something like this, which I can use to add something drop if you're working with hot sauces and drinks. So you don't need to buy a 40 or 45 bottle of chili liqueur, but super fun to play with. And it still gives the Jibinabuna like all its room to evolve.
Well, and even if you go overboard with the hot sauce, Matthias, it's not a mistake. It's just a learning moment. Yeah. Hot sauce seems to be very hot. Got a questioner in.
Yeah.
Empty whiskey pots to put hot sauce in.
I think you see it a lot. Like I've also recently was talking to somebody who had a beer in a Tabasco barrel. Like there's so many things going on. I've been talking a lot with the guys from Sweat in Brussels, like the Belgian hot sauce brand, who have so many experimentals going on. We talked about it with you brought the Kriek one, didn't you? Yeah. So they have ones with all kinds of fruits. They're playing around with barrels themselves.
And they're also looking up the collaborations with beer producers and drinks producers of all kinds to do some collabs on hot sauce. So very interesting stuff.
I think it's one of those things, like if you're not into hot sauces, you'll probably not understand it. But if you're into tasting hot sauces, you know that you can get a high from too much hot sauce, like a capsaicin high or something, where you really feel like it's taking over your senses. So in that way, it plays like alcohol. Or there was a hype about CBD infusions in cocktails or in mocktails was better because there was some talk about it not being very healthy combined with alcohol. But people were playing around with CBD in non-alcoholic drinks, and I think people are always looking for that fine line between what is altering your senses in like the tiniest ways. Sauce is definitely something that you can get into as well. It's an entirely different discussion, obviously, but
as Mikael is pointing out, chili peppers in beers are a thing. So especially in stouts, you can get some really good results. Again, if you don't overdo it, because I've had some that just basically kill the rest of your evening if you try one. And then Dirk is adding milk and honey. Had a single malt on a hot sauce cask. So they're
super
doing
cool.
Super cool stuff.
I think it's if you like it, it's an entire extra dimension. If you don't like it, don't bother. Don't get there.
You had another cocktail prepared with the Jebena?
Yeah, essentially a riff on the Black Russian. I'm calling it Black Bajan. Bajan is a term used for the Barbados people. Like a Bajan is somebody from Barbados. The Black Russian is actually the most well-known Belgian drink without many people knowing it's a Belgian drink. It's the most popular Belgian classic cocktail in history. Made in 1949 at the Hotel Metropole in Brussels. It still exists, but it's not known for its bar anymore. But Gustav Tops was working there after the Second World War, and he made a drink for the US ambassador of Luxembourg. And he named it the Black Russian for the very simple reason it had vodka, which was Russian, and it was black because of the coffee liqueur. One part
doesn't have to be difficult.
1 part vodka, 1 part coffee liqueur. Now, I combined it with a Barbados rum, unsweetened rum, like it's a bone dry rum, but something that is very, very leveled. You can use St. Lucian rum. I wouldn't go for the boldest Jamaican rums. Maybe like an Appleton. No brand mentioned. Sorry, but like something that's not too bold, but that does have some body to it. I wouldn't use Cuban rums or Puerto Rican rums. Not the solely column distilled ones. Pick something that has some body to it. For example, Barbados or St. Lucia or Trinidad or Guyana, something like that. And combine it with the coffee liqueur and just pick your favorite bitters to combine it. In this case, I picked cocoa bitters or cacao bitters, whatever you want to call it, and stir it in the glass. Don't stir it beforehand. Just nice block of ice, 1 part liqueur, 1 part rum, just some bitters. Stir it up and let it evolve. Let it dilute in the glass. Give it some time. Super easy drink because like this. Both of the drinks are super easy because this liqueur needs its like I'd say it like a podiumplaatsje,
place in the sun, place in the spotlights.
Yeah, place in the spotlights. You want it to shine next to the spirit.
Is just side note, the glass you're using, is that the one from Hooch from
it's,
Jochen?
It's a Belgian design as well.
Yeah. I just recorded a podcast with Jochen last week, so that's why I recognize it. Yeah.
It's called the Gats.
It's
the Great Gatsby. It's a beautiful design. Comes in the low ball and the high ball version.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah. Absolutely. Cool glass, Belgian design, Belgian thing. All right. Cool stuff, Matthias. Next coffee liqueur?
Let's
go to the south of Italy.
Yes, let's go to Italy.
Santa Maria al Monte.
To Genoa. How do you say it in English? Genoa.
Is it? I thought Genoa. It's not the south of Italy.
It's a northwest. The port of Genoa. Well, it could be that these days it is distilled in the south, but it was originated there. With many products, production has shifted from where it started to where it is happening right now. So that could be where the confusion comes from. Genoa in Liguria, close to Corsica, the island. Very big port there, which was very important for the first coffee arrival in Europe, 17th century. The Arabian Peninsula started having connections. And we talked about the word wine and coffee before. So it was actually also called, in Italy, they call it Arabian wine when it first arrived. Roasting it, and either from both the coffee to later on coffee liqueurs are used for, as with many types of alcohol, medicinal purposes. Let's say it's a bit sad we don't use it like that anymore, but maybe it's for the better.
I do.
Although I got to admit, real story, whenever I have a sore throat, which happens a lot as a teacher / music teacher, I drink teas, to which I add 1 or 2 dashes Angostura bitters. It's a habit. I say to myself that it helps. But herbs, yo.
Power of the mind helps a lot.
Exactly. Again, as with many products, we're dealing with 100% Arabica here, with a lot of love for the craft and Italy's love for coffee as well. I think it is the most straightforward coffee product from the entire range today. I think this one befits most the idea of what people have of a coffee product in terms of liqueurs or spirits. It's very honest, very straightforward. I didn't get as many different types of like flavor tones that we were dealing with the Jibina Buna or with the spirits. This one's like, if I'm thinking coffee liqueur, that's the one you want, you know?
Yep.
It's also like they use neutral alcohol, so there's no rum base or gin base or whatever type of base we're dealing with. They will distill up until neutral alcohol, so essentially high proof vodka, you could say. Sugar, glucose, and coffee infusion, and that's it. So straightforward, no nonsense. But in that sense, also, if we're dealing with cocktails, a very thankful product to play with.
Yep. I think you shouldn't really compare them, the Jebena and this one, because it's totally different area, but they're both coffee liqueurs. Jebena is more complex. This one is more straightforward, but also on the price, much more accessible, much more easy to work with, I think. So it's question of what you need it for, I think.
Yeah, this would be a product where you could say it smells like coffee or it tastes like coffee. But in that sense, sometimes that's what you need, you know, like sometimes you don't need the craziest single malt whiskeys, you just want a nice blended scotch. Sometimes you don't want the craziest high ester Jamaican rums. Sometimes you just want a clean Cuban rum for your cocktails, and that's, in this case, this is what could be an alternative to the more well-known coffee liqueurs like the Kaluas or Tia Marias.
Supermarket brand coffee liqueurs. This is just little step up.
They have a ridiculous, delicious amaretto as well, Santa Maria.
I think we had it in one of the earlier masterclasses a couple months ago. So yeah.
This is Italian craftsmanship. You know, it's pretty no nonsense, pretty straightforward, but everything about it is good.
I was just going to say, if you're an Italian and you want to make a coffee liqueur, it better be damn good, right? Yeah. In Italy.
Yeah. Sugar levels are a lot higher than the Gibina, I presume. The ABV levels are a bit higher as well, so we're dealing with 30 again. 30. So we're going up 5. I would say that it doesn't taste as strong. So it could be a little bit dangerous if you're using it in mixed drinks. Mark says we had Santa Maria Amaretto.
It was a session a year ago. Yeah.
Which was absolutely.
And a link to his blog, of course.
As he should. Now, this one is. This is a powerhouse in classic coffee liqueur cocktails. So
I'll put it on the screen for you.
Yeah, let's start. I think, did you start with the espresso martini?
Slow morning.
Yeah. So that's another espresso martini where I used a grappa instead of vodka. So I wanted to have an Italian vibe to it. For the aged grappa, I can enclose it here. I used Giulia from Cinoco as well. So, which has a great base, which gives a bit more complexity, but it's not super pronounced in terms of like going all over the place. Just a solid, straightforward product. Espresso Santa Maria, and I did add some. I was in the vibe, some vanilla to it. This drink was actually made, I think, a year or over a year ago, because that picture is from the old place I used to live. It's not in the house I live right now. But it just shows how long I've been using this product in drinks as well. I've been using it quite a bit. Using star anise instead of coffee beans as a garnish. And optional, as you could see, like adding a little bit of pimento dram. Pimento dram, for those who are not familiar with it, is a liqueur based on allspice, Jamaican pepper berry, which allspice means it tastes a bit like nutmeg, clove, and all kind of those wintry spices all together. A bit of nutmeg in it.
Bit of Christmas in a bottle.
Yeah, Christmas in a bottle, but most of the brands for a liqueur are super dry, so very low in sugar, very pronounced. That's why I'm only adding 1/3 of a bar spoon, so it's just like a touch of let all the spices be there. Grappa is a perfect espresso martini spirit. It's not something mixologists or bartenders think of. It's not a very popular spirit to work with, because there is no big cocktail culture to the spirit on itself. But it works very, very well.
Why would you say that works very well, especially in this one? Is it because the flavors work well with the coffee?
Grappa works very well with coffee because it has some. It's one of the spirits where fruitiness and herbaceous notes are very closely tied together, so you can do a lot with it. It's a bit like pisco is another one of those. Like it's a highly aromatic grape spirit, way more than a cognac or an Armagnac is, because they're often the flavor tones and the subtleties of the eau de vie are enhanced by wood. Whereas with grappa, it's a bit more aromatic on the grape side. But this is where espressos and coffee liqueurs get a very nice tie-in a different way than you would add, for example, a rum or or something to it.
All right. You had another cocktail with this one?
Yes, I've been
But
busy.
this is named no name yet because it doesn't have a name yet.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I have a name by now, but I was working on it.
Yeah.
This one, like, I don't often toot my own horn, to use a figure of speech, but this is an extremely delicious dessert drink. It had this tiramisu-y vibes to it, using a rum. And in this case, I'm asking for a light style rum. So anything from Cuba or Puerto Rico or the Latin American countries, the mainland, not the islands, something that's very unpronounced.
Would you use the Caracas, the base Caracas, for example? Or is that too much already?
Yeah, it's gonna be too sweet.
Okay.
I would prefer. I would actually almost go for like the Bacardis and the Havana clubs. You know, like something, maybe an El Dorado 3, maybe an Angostura, the youngest one at 3 as well.
Yep.
Something like that. Something that doesn't take up too much space. Add some coffee liqueur to it. If you would want to, and if you're very big into rums, you could add like some high ester rum to it, like, but just the tiniest bit, just to play around. But it's optional. Then some cold brew, cold drip coffee, and I know in this case I'm repeating myself with the vanilla, but some of the drinks were older. Like I was recycling some drinks I was working with, so don't think like, oh, he's always using vanilla in his drinks. What was awesome is like the float of heavy cream, and that's where like the link to an Irish coffee comes to work. So you just take some heavy cream and you whip it up with like a milk frother, you know, like the little. This is terrible. You whip it up until like its density is starting to like it's becoming a bit more airy, and just like slowly float it on top. And that's where you see like the difference between the cream of the froth of the coffee is a dark on the side, and the cream is the white. So if you float it slowly, it will push away the froth of the coffee to the sides.
Yeah.
Grated cinnamon on top. Optionally, some cocoa powder would work here as well. And I mean, like, if you're like the dessert kind of person, this instead of some tiramisu or something, yes, do it.
Okay. I see some dessert people taking notes, so there we go. But yeah, I think as we said, the Santa Maria, quite versatile if you need the coffee flavor in your cocktails. So yeah, I think it's time to go to the last one, which is the Ojo de Dios, the mezcal. Odd Cafe, it's called, so Ojo de Dios Cafe. I'll pour some for myself, and then I'll tell you a little bit about it. And I think Matthias is preparing also a cocktail live.
Yes.
In a minute.
I will in just a sec. Maybe in the meanwhile, just one more thing that I didn't really discuss or didn't say. Liqueurs versus coffee infused spirits or sweetened spirits comes down to essentially would be sugar level. So legally speaking, anything under 70 grams per liter cannot be called a liqueur. Anything I think between 70 and 90 is like the gray area, and then from then on it has to be liqueur. So that's where, depending on geographically where it is labeled and where it is sold, you get the confusing type of labeling. Sometimes you will see spirit drink with something added to it. Sometimes you will see liqueur, puncho, rum, whatever, all those kind of words. So when is something a liqueur? I think from the moment of over 70 grams per sugar, you can start calling something a liqueur. It has nothing to do with ABV. For example, Chartreuse is the green one is 55%. It can be as low as like 20 or something.
Yeah.
So that's not something to look for. It's a very gray area. But what we do notice these days, compared to, for example, 15 or 20 years ago, is that producers actually often want to be called either a quality liqueur, like the Jibinabuna or something, or the Santa Maria, and some products really want to stay with the
spirits,
spirits,
rum infused or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In terms of tasting, it's always a bit it's always difficult. But normally these days the products themselves try to really stay close to one thing or another. Whereas, for example, the Ojo de Dios that we have right now is really staying close to the spirit infused product.
Yeah. It's also made completely differently. I mean, it's not infused with beans, but it's actually blended with coffee.
Yeah.
As I gathered. So Ojo de Dios, we had the mezcal, the Joven mezcal in an earlier tasting too. So they are a mezcal maker from Mexico, of course. Ojo de Dios stands for the eye for the soul and a window to heaven. To the how do they call it, the heavenly plane or something like that. It's a thing in the Mexican culture. And so what they did here is they blended their own mezcal with coffee made from Arabica beans from a local coffee maker, planter coffee farm, Mejia Bautista in Oaxaca. Also, again, to showcase what Mexico is all about, what mezcal can be about, and also what the coffee from Mexico can be about. Interesting to note, Ojo de Dios is an all-female team that make all these spirits. I do like the mezcal on itself. The fun thing about this, I poured it into my glass, and it's kind of hazy because, of course, it's a blend with the coffee. So I kind of like that. But I'm quite curious about what you all think about this. Erikis had already said before starting it that he was curious or afraid mezcal with coffee. I don't know what you guys think. While Matthias is off for some ice, he's going to make a cocktail again. So just to mention. So they have the mezcal, they also have this one, and they also have a third product, which is raspberry. They use, I think it's raspberry. Dirk might correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought it was a raspberry product with their mezcal. So quite interested to taste that again, to taste that too. Hibiscus, that was it. I was thinking about something pink, and I forgot it was hibiscus. There you go. Simply delicious, Mikael says. A blend you wouldn't think would work, but it's spot on. Well, I don't know. I kind of was very intrigued because of the combination of smokiness of mezcal and the flavors of coffee. I actually thought it would work. So, and I'm happy it does.
Yeah. I think it's something we haven't really addressed yet, but something that we have seen with a lot of the products here before. Especially with the rums. Why are there so many coffee infused rums? And that's the concept of like what grows together goes together. That Jeroen and I were talking about like before the tasting. There's a lot of countries where sugar cane is being produced that also produce coffee, and you see that the culture intertwines at one point, and it becomes a thing, both in flavor but also in spirit and essence of what the people do. And so whether it was rum based or agave based, could be like Patron used to have. It's discontinued right now, but they used to have XO de Patron, which was a coffee liqueur from Patron Tequila. It's definitely something that is made. For those who don't know, Kahlua, for example, is also rum-based. So it's not as pronounced as the products we had. But it's something that is often done, and which makes sense in a way.
Yeah, Eric puts up a point that I can kind of follow. The espadin has been pushed away by the coffee. It's only in the finish that you have some mezcal in the flavor. Is that a question of what you're expecting or what you think you're expecting? If you think it's mezcal, yeah, it's not. Well, it doesn't taste like mezcal for me. It's just a completely different product. But yeah, it's expectations, I think.
Yeah, you get the smokiness that
Yeah.
you know from most mezcals, because
Yeah.
that's another hot topic we could dive into. But the most espadins are pretty smoky. That one you get throughout, but the typical agave, grassiness, earthiness.
Yeah, that's a bit gone. That's been replaced by the coffee, I feel. But
yeah, it has the longest finish. Yeah, it's
absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of the more complex products. In terms of spirits, I think this one would be my favorite of the tasting, personally speaking. Whereas the Jibina would then be my favorite on the other side, the more liqueurs, the heavily sweetened ones. But yeah, if you're expecting a mezcal with subtle coffee notes, you're not in for a fun ride. But if you're in for a coffee product that is mezcal based, I think they did a very good job here.
Yeah, no, I think so too. Oh.
All right. In the meanwhile, I'll make my drink and then.
Yeah, there you go. There's something I put it on the screen while you prepare, Matthias. In the top right corner, there's something that Dawn Davies, I don't know who he or she is, but the best introduction to mezcal on the market, and might be that these kinds of product, because mezcal is not an easy product for a lot of people to get into, that these kinds of products open up the drink to more people. And again, while Matthias is preparing, Dirk is putting the prices, the retail market prices, in the chat. So
yeah, I can see why they say it, but it's a dangerous thing. It can be a bit deceiving in the way that a lot of people get into rums through spiced rums or something, and it gives you some kind of expectations to it.
Yeah.
Is it a gateway product? Yes, it is. But is it the smartest way to get into it if you really want to dive into the world of mezcals? No, not really.
No, because you're going to get a completely different experience if you go to the normal, between brackets, mezcals after this, of course. Yeah.
So in the meantime, I'm preparing a drink with the easiest name of the bunch to understand what I'm doing, which is called a Mexican coffee Negroni. Essentially, I switched the gin for Ojo de Dios cafe. I'm using sweet vermouth, Cuccello in this case, very nice vermouth di Torino sweet vermouth. And then I'm splitting my aperitivo that normally would be just Campari or any other red bitter with Cynar. Cynar is a Amaro, a digestivo, which has some artichoke bitter in it, which makes it a bit darker in itself, a bit more complex, a bit heavier in taste, turning it into not a Negroni that you would drink as an aperitivo, but more as a digestivo. So the heavier flavors here would make it slightly less easy to get into. But mezcal Negronis are the hype everywhere. I'm not sure if many of you follow the mixology trends on itself, but even I got messages from people the past couple of weeks who went to Bar Convent Berlin, etc., BCB. They were saying like, oh, they were serving mezcal Negronis everywhere. And like I was already working on this masterclass, and I had made myself a mezcal Negroni as well. So you know, it's super popular at this point. But the combination of coffee, different types of herbs is really, it's super easy. I'm doing it directly in the glass. I didn't use a mixing glass. I use a nice big ice cube. Make these myself as well, just in a mold, big ass cube. And in honor of Gary Regan, who passed away a while ago, he was a finger stirrer. Who just,
what a great word.
Even for his guests, he would just use a finger stir. And funny story, Cocktail Kingdom, which is a bar tool shop, they actually sell a bar spoon that has a mold of his finger to stir with. So you get a metal finger that was molded after Gaz Regan's that you can use to stir.
There
drinks.
are other shops that do similar things.
So you can't do it like this. Just no nonsense, you know. This is all about hospitality. It's about having a drink. It's not about like the clean thing going on.
Yeah.
Doing it like this, stirring it up, and because of the heaviness of the drink, it's something I let dilute in the glass. Take time to drink. Don't feel too bothered with, oh no. Often I will say after 10 minutes, the drink starts to die. But in case of drinks that you pour directly in the glass, as you can see, the ice cube I used for the picture there had been in there for a while. The sharp edges were already gone. Like I was just enjoying it. You know, I had been playing around with the drink, and it is so dark and complex that you can easily just, you know, it doesn't always have to be the most little drops of this and that. Sometimes you just want something that has a bit more hospitality to it than it has consistency to it.
Consistency, finesse. Yeah, great stuff, of course. And I do enjoy myself a mezcal Negroni also. So I'm gonna make one with this in the near future for myself too. In the meantime, you've all seen it in the chat. Dirk has put the retail prices up there. And I think it's kind of fun to see that it's actually the liqueur with the lowest alcohol of the whole tasting that's the most expensive. Well, there you go. So you wouldn't expect that, I guess. But Dominic is saying in the nose, for him, favorite is the Caracas Club. Then the taste he goes for Le Canaille, and for the finish, the odd, the mezcal. So yeah, I guess that's 3 bottles for Dominic then. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in terms of what we tried, you get coffee in so many different ways that I definitely can expect. I'm not sure if everybody's gonna do their favorites, but it could.
Yeah, you should. By the way, I was going to ask. So you put your favorite in the chat if you want. And sorry, Matthias, to interrupt you.
No, I was going to say, like, for me, Jibina and the mezcal are way up there, and then there's a whole bunch right in the middle, where the Roncolon and Le Canaille would be for me, and then a bit lower, like. If I can be as rude as saying a least favorite, I would say the gin, because I'm just not a fan of very sweet gin products. I'm not huge into slow gins, for example, either, or other gin liqueurs. Juniper for me is something that I kind of expect in a different setting. But there was so much to talk about. Yeah, I see a lot of fans of Caracas.
Yeah, but Mikael is it's just because he loves the smell of brain aneurysm. I mean, toast.
Yeah.
For me, I think just a favorite of the evening, the Jebena is an eye opener for me, because I'm not that big into liqueurs. I don't like sweetness as much, but this one is just out of this world, really good. And then yeah, I'm most excited about doing something with the Ojo de Dios, I think. So yeah, nice stuff. I think we can all agree that this was a very different and a very interesting tasting night because we're exploring some products that I think most of us are not really familiar with. Matthias, of course, is, because he's a teacher and he does everything with coffee, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, but I think it was really interesting to dive into these products, to get a taste of them, and also to see that they are very different from each other, because it's easy to just have prejudices about this. Yeah, it's coffee, so it will taste like coffee. But I guess all of us learned tonight that we're never going to say it tastes like coffee again. We're going to try a little bit harder. Matthias, is there something you would like to say as a closing word for everybody?
Sure. Catching me off guard here.
Yeah. You know, I always do this.
I'd say definitely, like, if you get the chance, play around with coffee a bit more in drinks. Both, you can infuse your own spirits with coffee beans as well and see where it leads you. Like, I think this tasting shows that there are so many opportunities of using coffee in different ways. Thanks also for the kind words of everybody. I think Cinoco did a great lineup here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Just I agree with that, and also because this is a lineup that you will never ever do again, I think.
Yeah.
Because who does this kind of lineup?
It caught me a bit off guard when they initially asked me. I was like, "Oof, that's a lot of coffee," but after like seeing how the products were made and in which way coffee was integrated in everything, I was like, okay, I do understand what we're doing here. So yeah. Thanks, Cinoco.
Hey, great last words. I mean, for the night, Matthias, not last words in general. But thanks for that. Thank you also for preparing in these cocktails and all the recipes and the ideas. So as I said, everybody who signed up for the masterclass will get these recipes, will get the PowerPoint with all the recipes in them. I'll send them over in a couple, somewhere this week. As soon as I get up the recording of the session on the YouTube channel too, I'll send the link out. And yeah, this was the last one for 2023.
Happy New Year.
Sorry, Happy New Year, everybody. But I hope and I think that we'll do more of these next year. So, and if so, you'll all hear about it in due time. So thanks everybody for being here, and let's hope to see each other live somewhere in the near future. Cheers, guys. Yeah, Amandine, sorry. There is a last online masterclass by Chris in a couple weeks. It's probably a bit whiskey, Amandine. I'm not sure. Irish. There we go. Yeah. So, and so that concludes my professional conclusion of the session. There you go. Thanks all, and see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.